Hello, welcome to the Asian Women of Power podcast. I'm your host, Kim Chi Chow. This is another special episode about the movie Crazy Rich Asian, which is ranking number 1 in America right now. Last week, you have heard from the Asian man's perspective, and this week, you will hear from the Asian women's perspective. We are going to talk about how this movie impacted us as Asian American and how different our view is compared to the Asian who still live in their own country. The plot of the movie Crazy Rich Asian follow Rachel Chu, an Asian American woman who accompanies her boyfriend, Nick Young, to Singapore for his childhood best friend's wedding. This is the first time Rachel will meet Nick's family. Like most Asian Americans, she does not expect much, but what happened during this trip will open her eyes, test her heart, and challenge her identity. We are not going to review too much about the movie, but we are going to talk about a few scenes in this movie. Now, let's welcome our women's panel. Please introduce yourself, your name, your ethnicity, generation, marital status, occupation, and your age. Let's start out with Patrice.
Hi, I'm Patrice Tanaka. I'm Japanese American, born and raised in Hawaii, third generation Sansei. I live in New York City now, and I'm a consultant, and my company is called Joyful Planet because that's my vision for the planet. If 7.6 billion people are living their purpose and contributing their talents, their expertise, and their passion to making the world a more joyful place. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Next, Wendy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy Kim, and I am half German, half Korean, and I am second generation. My occupation is I'm a business and executive coach for people who want to level up their business and their lives. And I am 41, I think last time you asked her age. And I am married with 2 beautiful children. I have a daughter who is 8 and a son who is 10, and super excited to be here.
Welcome. Larissa?
Hi, everyone. My name is Larissa Lam, and I live in Pasadena, California with my husband, Baldwin, aka Only One Chu, and we have a 5-year-old daughter. I am a recording artist and music composer, as well as a TV radio host and now documentary filmmaker. I did a film called Finding Cleveland that is about the early Chinese in Mississippi and my husband's family and tracing his roots there. I'm second generation Chinese American. My parents came over as graduate students in the 1960s. They were born in Shanghai, came via Hong Kong, growing up there, and then came to the US and had me. Glad to be here.
Welcome. Abby?
Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Cubey. I am a fashion, beauty, and wellness entrepreneur. I live in Bel Air, California, and I'm very happy to be here.
And marital status, your age?
Single, very single. Single and available, everyone.
Single, available. All right. You guys, single guys out there, listen up. Check her out. All right. Okay, the first question for you. If you have seen this movie more than once, tell us your reason to see it the second time. Who have seen it the second time?
I've seen it twice. I saw it first before it opened And it was with a panel afterwards comprised of some of the actors in the movie. And then I saw it immediately a few days later that Friday because I wanted my ticket sales to count in the opening weekend box office so we could make this a big hit. And I'm excited to see, I was just looking at something earlier that I think it's reached 207 million in terms of sales to date, which is really exciting. I hope this movie gets to be 300 million or 400 million, and there'll be many other, movies with all Asian American casts. So very exciting.
Who else seen more than once? No? All right. So what is your most memorable scene that triggered one of these emotions, like sadness, happy, angry, ashamed, or humorous?
For me, the saddest scene in the movie, it was filled with love as well, was the scene in which Nick Young's mother was helping him fix his collar and fix his tie when he had to change his shirt at his party. And you could tell there was so much love that she had for her son. And I can't remember now if we learned before that scene that she actually allowed his grandmother to raise him because she wanted to make sure that he would be, a preferred godson or grandson, because she herself was not approved of by, the grandmother who was the matriarch of the family. So I think Michelle Yeoh was so great in the movie, and that scene was very powerful. And to me, it spoke of sacrifice. And a lot of times when I think of Asian Americans, I think of sacrifice. When I think of women, Asian American women, including my mother, I think of sacrifice, what they do for their families, for their children,
Yeah, I think for me, the scene that really kind of got to me was when Eleanor is talking to Rachel, and you kind of think that, at least I thought, oh, well, she's warming up to her. Maybe she'll accept her into the family. And maybe she'll understand because she herself wasn't accepted into the family. And then she ends up telling Rachel, you'll never be good enough.
Right.
And that was pretty horrifying. And it stands out to me because I think a lot of times in the Asian culture, people feel like they're not good enough. Not just in the Asian culture, but I think especially, like, my experience of the Asian culture is growing up, people weren't like, oh, you're doing such a great job, you're doing so well. It was more like, oh, well, do this, and why aren't you doing that, and get better grades and do better at this. And I think it was coming from a heart of love, but at times didn't really feel that way. And so I think it reminded me of that just from my own upbringing. And I think, now that I'm a mom myself and Asian American and raising my kids, wanting to show them that they are good enough and that they are lovable and that they are doing enough. So that scene really stood out to me.
I think my favorite scene was the mahjong scene. on many levels. For me, I was actually taught mahjong by my grandfather at a very young age. And it's funny because growing up, my mom would chastise my grandfather because she'd say, "You never let me near the mahjong table," because it was gambling. And so, you know, my mom never got taught by my grandfather, but my grandfather taught me. And so seeing that piece of my own culture and my family like brought a lot of emotion to me. And then the scene itself where the two women are kind of facing off, and in a sense, like, you know, Rachel, she gave a lot of respect, you know, to Eleanor. And, you know, I think I was expecting it to go kind of the way of a lot of romantic comedies or soap operas where it's going to get catty and they're one-upping each other and sabotaging each other. And it wasn't. And, you know, Rachel actually did a noble thing, and she sacrificed her happiness so that Nick would still retain his, you know, his relationship with his mother, which is sacred, you know, in Asian culture. And so to show that sign of respect for an elder, for a parent, is not normally something I think you see in these types of movies. And again, from a cultural standpoint, I thought it just played beautifully on so many levels with the setting of the mahjong, but also the significance of her. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, for allowing her to win. I did know how to read the cards. I have a lot of, my brother-in-law didn't know what happened, if she won or not. And I said, no, she actually had the winning card and she chose not to throw it out and to let Eleanor win, which was symbolic. Again, spoiler alert, sorry. But that was my favorite scene.
My favorite scene as well is the mahjong scene. It just shows class, it shows power, it shows all other emotions. It's actually, I have a lot to say, but I just, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't know which one comes out first. I think all of no, the majority of us, because a lot of Asians in the new generations are, it's, well, I can't say bad things, but anyway, so we all sacrifice coming here, or our parents, or, you know, I think that the mahjong scene shows a lot of class with Rachel, and I could be Rachel. I can see myself in that scene. But yeah, I really, that's my favorite scene. That triggers all kinds of emotions in me.
Yeah, I think the scene where Eleanor told Grace by the stairs that Grace will be never be enough, right? It's in the way I feel that she said it from her heart that she was not enough, and therefore nobody will be enough. No other woman will be enough in this household because of the status, because of the power, because of where they're coming from. This is like a powerful, rich family. And as a woman, they come in, and there's a lot of expectation from the grandmom, right? The mom passed it down to her, and now she's a mom. She will look down on the future daughter-in-law, right? You say, no matter what you do, no matter how many degrees you got, you will be never enough to meet the expectation of the family, to be, you know, to be perfect woman in this household. So that I felt kind of sad, really sad when I saw that. I think that I cried during that time. All right. So what scenes are important and significant in this movie, and why? What do you think about the beginning scene, right? The young family was treated poorly at the hotel, where they did not look like they are wealthy, and, you know, they look like somebody from the street, and they Asian, they might not be, you know, not be able to speak English and things like that. So how do you feel when you saw that scene?
seeing that scene was kind of a good entry point where it's something that is, I don't think, rarely portrayed in film, where you see an Asian family discriminated against. And I think with many of, you out there, that there's a history of discrimination in this country against Asian Americans. And that specifically was in the UK, which there is also a history of discrimination in the UK. It's not just limited to the US, and in Canada as well, and other countries. And so I think, and I don't even think they were even seen as poor. I think they were seen from a racial, point, where it's that adage, like, well, we don't serve your kind, based on your skin. And so I loved that she just called her husband and said, honey, let's buy the hotel and get rid of this problem right then and there. And that again just shows, that she had power, and she exercise that power to rectify an injustice. And I think furthermore, with even the theme of Crazy Rich Asians, and I know, not all Asians are crazy rich. I know I'm not. But the fact is, we're not the boat people. We're not the best friend. We're not, the maid or the prostitute, the nail salon lady, in the situation where someone who is an owner and business owner of a very wealthy, enterprise.
Yeah, I think it really set the movie off on a right note, a different note than what people are used to seeing Asian people in a movie. And I love that, she was able to rectify this wrong, within minutes. And I think it kind of got people's attention that, oh, is that what this movie is about? The Asians are in charge. So I kind of like that immediate scene setter,
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead, Abby.
Oh, I liked it when they came in and they're all wet, and like these people were judging them basing on their looks, and then next thing you know, boom, they own the hotel. It's I think it's cool. It's a very cool factor. It's a good takeoff of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what you were all saying earlier, I think characterized in movies, especially American movies, Asians are like the dry cleaning owner, or like they're, like some type of especially women, some type of like sexual object, or they're a doctor, or very stereotypical roles. Like they're never really considered front and center, let alone powerful. Like Asians never, that I can see, unless it's like a kung fu movie, are never portrayed as powerful in the American or in the Western culture. So I think that's really cool that with this movie, and even with that scene, that's hopefully changing now.
And I love the fact that what I love about this movie is there's so many powerful women in this film. And it starts off with a powerful woman, Michelle Yeoh, just, righting this wrong immediately and setting, that hotel manager straight. And, for this whole movie, women really came to the fore and shone and turned the tide in every situation, righted the wrong, and, put the world back spinning on its axis. So yeah, love this movie for all of the powerful Asian and Asian American women in it.
Yeah, in the beginning I like it because it's like, oh, don't judge the book by its cover right away, just like that. And then all the way through, it was just all exciting. I love it.
I think it was also important to paint Eleanor in a little bit of a sympathetic light, because she could have easily gone the way of Dragon Lady, right? Or the difficult mother-in-law that you see so typical, whether it's Asian or not, that role, and the fact that you kind of see an insight that she's had to face discrimination. And even I think the scenes where she revealed that she had the same issue with her own husband, with with her Nick's grandmother Amma, who's played by Lisa Liu, who's actually a very close family friend of mine, and she is still, even to this day, having to seek the approval of her mother-in-law. And again, she was multi-dimensional. She just wasn't mean mother-in-law, and I really love that about her, and the way the movie was constructed.
Yeah.
What do you think about the scene where they gather together, they make the dumpling? Does your family have similar tradition that you gather together, you cook, you make something together, or you eat and share the same pot or something like that?
Yeah, so I would say in our culture, no. I mean, my mom moved here when she was 18, and she really wanted me. So she was pretty young, and she's quite Americanized, and she wanted me to be very American. So unfortunately, like, I don't speak Korean. I actually don't know a lot about. I had to, when I got older, I visited Korea and I learned about the culture by reading books and talking to people and going there myself. But unfortunately, she never really taught me those things. And I actually think that's kind of a shame that in some cases, Asians coming to the US felt like they couldn't celebrate their culture because they wanted the children to assimilate. So thankfully, I can now learn about it through talking to people and Google and things like that. And I can share some of those things with my children, which I'm excited to. But it would have been great if I could have actually gotten that.
I remember my grandmother making more wontons than dumplings. And it was something we sat around the kitchen table, and I would, help put the meat in, and she'd teach me how to fold them and wrap them. And I think at the time when you're growing up, you don't realize that's unique to your culture. You just think, oh, doesn't everybody do this with their family? And then you start talking to people, and I've had conversations with people that are not Chinese who were like, what's going on with the dumplings? And it's like, oh, it's something that a lot of families do, whether it's dumplings, wontons, or something similar, during holidays, that brings the family together and shows kind of this unity. And then I think once people learn that, they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And hopefully those people that think it's cool, and I mean, maybe I'll have to sit around and make dumplings with my daughter someday. And so my grandmother's passed on, so I'll have to get a recipe from my mother on YouTube. So, but I hope it's something that we can continue to keep in our family going forward.
In my culture, I'm Filipino, by the way, I forgot to mention that earlier. We do, I don't know if you've heard of lechon. It's a pig, a big pig. So basically, whenever I come home, there's always like 2 or 3 of them waiting for me to eat with all my people in the whole barrio. So I'm like, I really like that. I really enjoy it. And I do this every year. I go there because my foundation is also there. So I do a feeding program, and it's almost like a family tradition now, since my family is in politics before. So yeah, those are, that scene reminds me of those, actually. It's my people in my barrio are my family, pretty much. I mean, they've supported me all the way. Even here, like they're always like post a good comments if I do something nice, or if I post something that are inspirational, they're always there. It's nice. It's nice to get those kind of support. I have a very small family. It's not very large. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Growing up in Hawaii, my family, my extended family, I think really observe traditions, Japanese traditions, more so around New Year's, where we all gathered and we had New Year. We spent New Year's Day together. Everybody brought dishes, the same dishes every year that, you know, were eaten on New Year's Day. And we're supposed to bring you good health and good fortune. And you're supposed to have your house cleaned for the new year. You're supposed to wear, you know, new clothes so that you could, you know, so this could set the tone for the new year. So I remember years and years of that tradition. And, you know, as our family has aged and people have, you know, moved away, we're celebrating these time-honored traditions, you know, less and less, which is sad. But rituals and traditions are a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. I want to find out about you personally, that you behave or you do the same thing as Ama did to Rachel, right? So she checked Rachel's facial feature out. They say, you have a good feature, you know, your nose, and your eye, or your face, or whatever. It's prosperity. Does your culture do that, or did any elder did that to you when you, let's say, when you know, you come to meet the future mother-in-law or something like that? Did it ever happen to you, Patrice, Larissa, Wendy, Abby?
My mother-in-law didn't do that, but I do have an uncle who is kind of a palm reader, and it's very interesting because he's like fairly accurate apparently, and he's a very strong Christian man too, and somehow the two kind of go together. I don't know, but you know, they do, and so I think he said I had good, you know, I had a good palm, but, you know, I know my dad would always say if there was something bad, he would never say it. So he did say something to me, so that meant that I had something good. But, you know, in general, I find it really interesting, whether it's feng shui or some of those other things, that there are a lot of aunties, not necessarily my mother-in-law, that will give me an opinion on how the double knots in the hair, that's something my daughter has. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but like some people's hair grows, you know how some people's hair just grows straight out? Well, my daughter's kind of is like knotted, where it kind of grows in opposite directions. And so apparently the double knot thing's supposed to mean that she's smart. At least that's all the Chinese aunties told me. So we'll see. She's only 5. We've got a few years to go.
Yeah, fortunately, I have like a very amazing mother-in-law, and she never, like, didn't do anything unusual like that. But I will say, growing up, my physical, in the Korean culture, and I would imagine in a lot of Asian cultures, like, there was a heavy emphasis on physical appearance and beauty. And like, I would, like, if like, oh, people would be like, oh, you have big eyes, or they would say things like that, and oh, you're tall. Like, so there was a lot of emphasis on physical appearance. And so I think that's something that I definitely was very aware of. And if there was someone who was not pretty, then there would be comments about that person. So just growing up, it was something that I was very much aware of as a girl.
So my grandma used to look at the profile of my face all the time. Growing up. I remember this, and she would read my palms, and she was like, oh, you're gonna be very successful in your life. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do this. So I guess if you have diamonds in your palm, so you have chances of getting successful. That's what she said. I was like, it's okay, cool. And then to this day, I always still think about it. I was like, maybe. No, actually, I worked so hard. So that's why I got here. So, but she would look at my feature, then she's going to say, I remember I was 7 then. She would look at it and she'd tell me, you're going to be very, very pretty when you're grown up. I was like, then I don't believe in those stuff. But actually now I think I'm good looking a little bit. I'm not sure, but yeah, I remember that. I remember my grandma on that scene actually.
I don't know if it's specific to being Japanese American, and I don't know that it, all of my aunties or grandmothers commented that way, because my grandmothers on both sides only spoke Japanese and I don't speak Japanese, so I didn't know what they were saying other than through their gestures and, But I think my mother, and again, I don't know if it's just specific to my mother or all mothers, but I was always kind of aware at times that I was either too outspoken or too stubborn or, too clumsy. Those seem to be major sins. And and I seem to be guilty of all of them growing up. That's all I remember.
Rebellious, huh?
Yeah.
Too outspoken, that's the American way.
That's right, yeah.
That's why I had to leave Hawaii, because, Hawaii, there's so many Asians in Hawaii. And because of that, Asians, sorry to generalize, but they're notoriously indirect, right? And so you never know where you stand. I would much rather have somebody tell me, no, I really don't like that idea, or I'm pissed at you, or whatever, because that's an efficient way to deal with, and get beyond the situation. In Hawaii, nobody ever confronts anyone because everyone has to get along. And because 40% of the population is Asian, everybody tries to get along. That's why I live in New York, because I always like the idea of, in New York, people kind of tell it like it is. And that works for me in business and in life. It's the most efficient and honest way to get through both, I think.
That's true.
Yeah,
we still need to hang out in Hawaii. We tell
Yes.
it like it is.
Absolutely.
That reminds me, so even though I'm not Japanese, I'm heavily influenced by Japan because I grew up in Hawaii, and I also lived in Japan for 5 years and speak the language. So I lived there in my 20s, and I worked with a lot of Japanese people. And that was one of the most frustrating things coming from America, working with Japanese people and trying to get everybody on the same page and trying to really understand what people felt and thought about things, because they wouldn't actually share that very directly. So yeah, you bringing that up kind of reminded me of those really long meetings.
My in-laws are notoriously, withdrawn with their comments. My parents are actually kind of atypical for Chinese parents. They tell me exactly how they feel. No opinion is really held back, but my in-laws, I can never get a read on them. Everything is so passive. I don't even want to say passive aggressive. It's just passive. And we have to kind of fish it out of them. Like if they like something or they hate something, they just will not say.
Yeah.
I love Japanese culture, though. One of my best friends is Japanese, so.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be negative. I hope I'm not coming across as negative.
No,
That is
that is so
Asian of you to say, I don't mean to be negative.
Yeah. And I'm the one who started it. I'm Japanese American. And for many years, I really had a problem with my the country and culture of my ancestors because of that, that need for purity and, everyone, if you're not 100% Japanese, then you're like not even second class, you're third, fourth, fifth class citizen. And that is totally against what I believe. So it was hard for me to embrace that country and that culture, though I do love the aesthetics and the design sensibility of Japan and Japanese culture. I don't like the very non-direct, indirect, you think everybody's agreeing, but they're in wild disagreement. They're just not saying it in public. So that's why you have endless meetings, which for me, inefficiency is probably the thing that makes me the most crazy. If a meeting has to be longer than it has to be to get something accomplished.
So next question, what did you learn about yourself after watching this movie? Are you proud to be an Asian American?
I think for me, what I really enjoyed about the movie that I thought they nailed was the fact that they did make that distinction of being the American versus someone born in Asia. And I felt so much like Rachel in the film as she was going through all the paces and having that conversation with her, with Eleanor, and how she says, you'll always be American. And when I've gone to Asia, I still have family in Hong Kong, I've been to mainland or Singapore, wherever in Asia, I'm looked at as the American. When we're here, they look as, oh, you're the Chinese one, no, over there, I am the American. And they can tell immediately that I'm American, probably because of the way I hold myself or the way I dress. And I'm always treated in that manner, almost, I don't want to say necessarily exactly second class, but certainly maybe, 1.5 class, down where, and early on now I speak fluent Chinese, but I don't read or write. So again, there's a little bit of like, oh, well, you don't speak completely fluently. I speak Cantonese, but I speak Mandarin conversationally, but, it's not good enough to hold a complete conversation or singing. I don't sing all my music in Mandarin. And so like, I feel like I'm held to a different standard when I'm Asia. And then over here, I'm not American enough by being Asian. And so I think that's the one thing that, I don't know if it's necessarily that I learned, but it kind of reinforced those things. And for me, it really hit home that this is what I wrestled with my whole life. And now it's finally on screen, and that other people can hopefully see that, what, just because you look the same as someone else that's Asian, there are so many different shades of gray. And, Patrice, you mentioned that too, being third generation, like there's, and being from Hawaii, as opposed to being from, Japan, or even being from the mainland, right? Like there's all these different shades of gray that we have to navigate as Asians, and the differences between Korean and Japanese and Cambodian and Filipino. And, like people don't understand that. And so this movie, at least in one ways, takes a step forward in starting to open these conversations.
I think what the movie reaffirmed for me is I'm very comfortable with strong women, and I'm very comfortable and familiar with strong Asian and Asian American women. And I like seeing that on the big screen. And I like the fact that in that movie, it was like the men were almost the second class citizens in the movie. The women were running the show in that movie. And, that's why the movie for me was satisfying on that level, because I think that, we women do what it takes to get the job done, and usually our instincts are coming from a place of wanting to protect, our families and loved ones, and to make sure they survive and thrive in the future. I think that, was where these women were coming from, and Eleanor I love that Eleanor wasn't a caricature. She wasn't just a dragon woman. There's a lot of nuance to her character, and I'm glad Michelle Yeoh played that character, because it could have gone into, caricature territory, and that would have really, done a disservice to Asian American women and Asian Americans. So that movie was very affirming and reaffirming to me, because I think sometimes in America, Asian Americans certainly are not thought of as leaders. They're thought of as strong managers, the model minority. And Asian American women aren't really thought of any more highly. So to see really strong women doing what it takes and being ruthless, if necessary, to get the job done was good to see on the big screen, because we're all of that. We can be docile, but we can also, roar like a lion and do whatever it takes, and I like seeing that on the, on the big screen.
I'm with you, Patrice. I have to fight my way here where I am. So I'm all about sacrifice. I'm all about fighting and fighting every day until the job is done. So I just like Eleanor's. I think she has the best role there, because she's very classy. It's not a very catty kind of. It's not a typical kind of movie where it's normally we Asians are being in a low, what do you call this, bad roles pretty much. So I like it.
Yeah. And I like that it brought out, and I said this earlier, the whole idea of sacrifice and delaying your own personal gratification for something bigger, like what Eleanor did for her son, Nick, by allowing his grandmother to raise her son. I mean, that's got to be like an impossible thing to allow someone else to raise your child, right? But if you're like her, thinking about what's best for your son and what's best for his future and for the future of the family, that is a sacrifice that she was willing to make. And that's sometimes in our American immediate gratification society, you don't see that kind of sacrifice that is thinking in terms of the long term and the bigger picture. So that was also satisfying.
Yeah. As a mom, go ahead, Abby.
I can relate to that, actually. I could fight for full custody, but I didn't. I don't have much to offer with my daughter here because I'm here by myself. My family don't want to come here because the culture is different. So yeah, my daughter's family, has better to offer to her. As to here, it's just gonna be me and her. So we decided we're doing 50-50, and it's hard in the beginning, but she's actually, it's her birthday coming up next week, so she's turning 15. Anyway, yeah, so I totally can relate as far as sacrifice. It's tough. I've had so many nights that I cried to my sleep, and I can't call my parents about this because I don't want them to be very sad. Because if I didn't have her, I would be living as a queen in my country, pretty much. So the sacrifice, we all sacrifice, I guess. So anyway, I don't want to cry. I look very ugly when I cry.
No, you're beautiful.
I think you are a beautiful mother and a beautiful person, and you look beautiful even crying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're beautiful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Abby. In response to the original question, I was going to say, for me, I was surprised at how empowered I felt actually seeing Asians, like an all Asian cast in a big screen Hollywood movie. Like I didn't really think it would affect me so much. Like I just thought, oh, okay, whatever. but to see that for the first time actually really had a deep impact on me. And it kind of made me feel like, yeah, in a way that, oh wow, like we can actually be front and center as Asians. We can actually be recognized and valued in that way, not just as like a doctor or a lawyer or the typical roles that Asians typically have. And so for me, even just seeing other Asian people on screen as actors and actresses and as lead actors and actresses was really powerful. And it made me think, yeah, like we are capable of leading. We are capable of doing more than maybe the culture has thought we were capable of.
I think we all want to be the hero of our own story, and I think we haven't seen that on a mainstream scale. And, you know, I grew up watching Meg Ryan and Julia Roberts. I'm sure many of you did as well. They were always the hero, Sandra Bullock. Every rom-com out there, it was a white lead. And so this was the first time, you know, it wasn't Drew Barrymore, you know, getting serenaded on a plane, or not, I guess wasn't serenaded, but she got proposed to on a plane. And The Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler did that with Drew Barrymore. And it was like, oh my gosh, I finally get to be on the plane, you know, and I'm not just a passenger, like that's the bystander watching the proposal, but someone that looked like me actually was the girl that was getting proposed to. And you're right, Wendy. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be that empowering to me either, but it really was. It felt like a watershed moment, and I hope it's something that doesn't take another 25 years, just like Joy Luck Club happened 25 years ago. I hope it's not another 25 years where we see an all Asian English speaking cast in a major studio movie. And, you know, I hope, like my daughter, when she grows up, she's going to get to watch it and she'll get to see herself as the hero of the story.
Yeah. And to think that like for us growing up, if we were to say something like, oh, I want to be a Hollywood actress, I mean, can you imagine that? Like, that wasn't even a reality. It's not like we could ever look to anyone as that. But now it's exciting to think of our children. Like, if our children decide they want to go down that path, that's actually possible now. Whereas prior to this movie, it didn't even seem like a possibility.
Yeah, and to that point, I wrote a book. It came out in 2011, and the book's title is Becoming Ginger Rogers: How Ballroom Dancing Made Me a Happier Woman, a Better Partner, and a Smarter CEO. And I wrote that book because the only reason I live in New York City today is because when I was 8 years old growing up in Hawaii, my dream was to dance like Ginger Rogers, right? I grew up on all of those old movies from the 30s and 40s, and my favorite ones were about Ginger Rogers. And of course, it never occurred to me that I look nothing like Ginger Rogers, right? But there's something in that childhood, well, if I can get myself to Manhattan, then I could be living in a white Art Deco penthouse apartment, and I could be going to a supper club every evening, and I could be wearing evening gowns and dancing in the arms of a Fred Astaire. I mean, that's why I live in New York City. But the thing that Crazy Rich Asians did for my book, and I hadn't even thought that this might be kind of one of the impacts, was that now people are interested in my book for TV or film because they're now more interested in Asian American content for film. So I thought, oh my God, I hadn't even thought about that. But that's a cool thing if we have more films and television shows with Asian Americans or Asians. I mean,
The crazy part here is we actually pioneer this whole thing. We Asians, because there will be, yes, because what would happen, I know this, and I see this coming because people are talking about it. There will be crazy rich Russians, there's going to be crazy rich.
Yes, you're right.
Armenians, they're going to be crazy rich. All kinds of races. So I'm excited how this is going to all turn out. But I guess we had to push the producers to basically excel this whole crazy rich Asian part 2, because I know that some races are gonna compete with us.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, I hope it's not limited to just crazy rich, but that there's so many other stories. And,
definitely.
And I think it's interesting that you're sharing, Patrice, because I do see kind of a little bit of bandwagoning happening. And in some sense, it's not a bad thing, but it's almost like these white people have discovered us. Like we've been here the whole time. And like, oh my gosh, this has been our huge discovery that Asians actually go to movies and that they can wear fancy clothes and they can be a romantic comedy lead. But in actuality, we've always been here and we've always been capable. We've just never had the opportunity.
Yeah. And, when you look at it and see that we're only 5% of the national population, it kind of, and you're a marketer, you're looking at those kinds of demographics and you're thinking, there's not really a market for Asian American content. But of course, if the themes are universal, it transcends any particular ethnic group, right? And it, there are a lot of trends that are universal to all ethnicities. So I think that's great that we could prove that out, that even though we're only 5% of the population, our stories, resonate with everyone.
Well, and 5% is not shabby. If you talk about actual numbers, we're talking about 18 to 20 million people. That's more than a lot of countries around the world, population-wise. And so, I think, and our population rose up and made it count, as well as, like you said, it has to appeal across, generations. And my husband and I had the weird questions of people saying, like, can I see this movie? I'm not Asian. And, and like, no, yes, of course you can see it. It's just like my Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I know a lot of people have used that example, which I think is great. It's like that's the number one romantic comedy of all time. It wasn't just Greek people that went to go see it. It was everyone. And so for some reason, when people hear Asian, they just think, oh, only Asians can go see it. But hopefully this movie dispels that, myth as well.
Yeah, it's just really an exciting time because like with movies like Crazy Rich Asians and Black Panther, like everyone's kind of tired of seeing the same white action male Captain America person. Like we've seen that movie so many times, and it's like it's exciting to see like Black Panther doing so well. It's exciting to see like Wonder Woman with a female superhero. I mean I really look forward to the time when we can watch movies and it's like you've got like an Asian lead, you have a Hispanic lead, you have a Black lead, you have a white lead, and it doesn't even matter anymore, right? Like we're not even having the conversation because it's so universal that like it's diverse and everyone is represented. And obviously we're not there yet, but it's exciting that this is a step in that direction.
Yeah, and that's why it was so important that this film be a huge success, so it's not frightening to other directors and producers to work with Asian content and Asian American and Asian actors, because we need more films to normalize seeing us on the big screen.
Okay, let's move to the next question. And I think this question is really important. What do you think and feel about wealth and money when you see the interaction between these married couples, Eleanor and Philip, which is Nick's parents, where Philip is the father who is traveling all the time and let the wife take care of everything in the household. He did not play an active role as a father figure raising Nick. Is it acceptable? I know that it is acceptable in Asia, but is it acceptable in America? Your thoughts?
I don't think it's acceptable anywhere personally to not have the father involved. I mean, I know the culture, like when I lived in Japan, that was one thing that really astounded me. I would see these Japanese businessmen who wouldn't get home until, like, I don't know, midnight. And so the only time they would see their children would be maybe on the weekend, but they weren't changing diapers, they weren't doing any form of childcare really. It was just all on the mom. And I think we may have covered this at some point, and that's why, like, I really believe that I have a son and a daughter, and for my son, he needs his dad to show him how to be a man. I mean, I can't show him how to be a man. So if you have that in a culture where the men are not around and they're being shown how to be a man by a woman, that there's like this mama's boy kind of like over reliance on mommy, and you kind of do see that in the movie. You see kind of a little bit of a weird dynamic with Nick and his mom when he's getting dressed and stuff. Like, that's a little bit of a weird dynamic, and I think they were alluding to that. So I feel like hopefully that's changing. And I know obviously for our generation, even like my husband he's Korean American and he's super involved, and his dad wasn't as involved. But thankfully, I think that is something that's great about the American culture, is men typically are more involved in the housework and the childcare. And so I think that really is teaching our boys and our children just healthy family dynamics.
Yep.
I certainly think that a lot of my Asian and Asian American friends have daddy issues as a result of kind of that, Asian expectation that the women, are constantly taking care of the child rearing duties. And you see that a lot with first generation immigrants that are coming over now, especially from China, where, just the women are here with the kids and the husband is still back in China, or it could be Korea or, any other country. And I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest situation. I mean, I can't judge every situation because I do know kids. My cousins grew up here without their families. They were kind of parachute kids. They actually lived with me for a little bit, or went to college here. And my dad was almost like a surrogate dad to all my cousins from Hong Kong because they were getting their, American education here. And, my uncles and my aunts love their kids. It goes back to that sacrifice, right? Sacrifice comes in different forms. And sometimes that sacrificial thing is letting your kids go to a different country to get a better education. And from, I think, our Western and our American view, that's something that, like, how can they be without their kids? Again, I'm still wrestling with it. I personally prefer, I'm very thankful my husband is very hands-on with our daughter. Otherwise, our daughter would probably be like a mess if it was just up to me, because I'm not like a baby person or a kid person. And so him being very hands-on has been very important for me, because I tend to take on more of the male characteristics when it comes to child rearing. And, I think having both parents is important. At the same time, I know a lot of situations you can't have that all the time. And so I think as parents, we all do the best that we can to fulfill the roles that we need to fulfill.
Okay, what do you think about the situation between Astrid and Michael? The Astrid is very beautiful, powerful, smart, and capable of managing her estate. But she had to play small and hid her jewelry so that her husband won't see it, so that he won't feel bad. that he cannot afford to buy those things for his wife. What is your interpretation on why Astrid did this?
I like that she did not blame herself and that she ultimately left him, because why should she, hide her greatness and all that she is just to make him appear larger than he is? I'm sorry that he felt insecure, but if he wanted to be that secure, then he shouldn't have married somebody who was that rich. I mean, that wasn't too bright.
That's true. But in a way, I guess I kind of I think I would do the same thing if I love someone and I don't want them to feel small. So, yeah, but I like that how she ends it though. It's just way too classy, I think. I love it. I think that's all I say the whole time. Classy. But I would totally do the same thing because I don't want my guy to feel small. To this day, I'm having challenges on finding a man for some reason. I don't know what it is. Anyway, no, I'm not complaining in this show.
Wasn't there somebody single on your other men's podcast, Kimchi? That's what Baldwin said.
Yes, let's do that. I want to meet him.
Matchmaking. That's very Asian. I was thinking in terms of their relationship, I mean, coming from an American perspective, it seems really odd because in the American culture, I mean, there's so many women who make more than their partner, their spouse. I mean, I think for the most part at this point, it's not so much of an issue in the American culture. It doesn't matter much if the woman makes more or if the man makes more. I at least in my world, maybe in California, I don't know, but yeah, in the Asian culture, I could see how that would still be an issue. How a man, we've talked about this, men are valued for providing, for making money. They aren't around with the kids, so that's pretty much their function, is to work and to make money. And so if he's not able to provide and more or be wealthier than her, I could see how he could feel insecure in that culture. Like, I don't agree with it, and I don't think it's a good reason for her to feel like she has to like hide her jewelry. But I think I understand in that culture why that dynamic would exist.
I'm swatting a fly or something, so it's not I'm waving you off, Wendy.
I was wondering.
It's like, if you're seeing me do that.
No worries.
I think for me, I somewhat relate to the situation with Astrid and her husband. Not to that extreme, but I certainly I grew up in a middle to middle upper class neighborhood, whereas my husband grew up in more of a working class neighborhood. And so there have been times where it can be a point of tension. And I never throw it, in his face or anything like that. And my parents have been pretty, good about, I mean, they love my husband, and my in-laws are great too. I mean, they cruise around the world, but they had very modest beginnings in this country, as did my father. I mean, I think I try to remind my husband that maybe my father attained a higher level of success, but my dad, he came with $60 in his pocket, had to work 3 jobs to put him through school, didn't know anybody here. I mean, he went to graduate school, and that was a defining difference. My husband Baldwin's parents both did not complete college. Both my parents have graduate degrees. So you already see a little bit of that status, you know, there difference. And then my dad was able to become a doctor and own his own business and lives in a gated community. And so there sometimes is a little bit of tension that I grew up with a little bit more than my husband. And even though right now we're obviously at the same level where we are right now, but even some of my parents' friends are, you know, a little on the wealthy side. I've met some crazy rich Asians. Some of them are family members. I have a cousin in Hong Kong who is just like Nick Young's family. Like she and all his, you know, friends and cousins who she splashed on all the gossip magazines. She's like, you know, kind of like a Paris Hilton in Asia, you know, and she had paparazzi at her wedding and I sang at her wedding. And so, I mean, I know like what that's like. And so sometimes like when my cousin comes over and she brings her 3 housekeepers with, you know, her on her trip and her limo and her driver to come to America on vacation, like that can be intimidating for my husband because that's not how he grew up. But I just have to constantly reassure him. It's like, I love you for who you are. It's like, if I wanted to marry somebody wealthy, I would have married somebody wealthy. It's not like we're super poor, but you know what I mean? Like that is something that is going to be an ongoing thing, but the best we can do is communicate about that. And hopefully I do try to give him as much confidence that he is good enough. He's awesome.
All right. So this is for fun. If the director wanted to cast you, which role would you like to play and why?
I would say the Peg Lynn character, because she is just so fun and funny and hilarious. And yeah, I love, because you don't see a lot of, I mean, it's changing, I think, with like Ali Wong and stuff, but yeah, typically Asians are serious, and especially women. So it's really, I think playing her would be a really cool character.
You think you can play her role in her role? Are you that funny?
Not to that degree, no.
You just need the wig. You just put on the wig and you wear the clothes and you're halfway there.
I have to take some more improv classes for that.
I could play Eleanor. I just love her character.
Yeah, I love her character too, but she would be hard to play better than Michelle Yeoh. I guess I would like to be Astrid. She has all that money, she's gorgeous, and she can buy, you know, whatever, a couple $1 million ring, and you know, and then and she's lovely on top of that. Yeah, I think I like her.
I was going to say Astrid too, although I probably relate most to Rachel. And I would like want to be maybe like Rachel's like fun loving cousin in the next movie or something who gets like, and maybe Nick has got a cousin that's single and then, you know, we have our own adventures.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that, you know, consider my age and things like that. I say, who would I play if this is real, right? If the producer or director would cast me. So I'm saying that I can be Astrid's coach to tell her how to deal with her husband. Right, to man him up. All right. So in less than 5 words, how would you sum up this movie?
I guess I would say modern day Asian Cinderella story.
I say crazy rich fun.
Ah.
I was just going to say that.
Sorry, I stole your answer.
Yeah, it has everything. Exciting, crazy. Yeah, she stole my answer. That's it.
I would say empowering, fun, and groundbreaking.
And I say, it's about time. It's about time we see this movie. All right. So, what would you recommend Asian men and Asian women to do before they see this movie or the next movie?
I would say invite friends who are not Asian to go see the movie. That's what I would tell people who are going to go see this movie or the next movie.
Why?
Because it's something that will be, I think, a fantastic conversation piece for after, you know, you with your friends. And I think a lot of your friends or your coworkers, like a lot of times they don't know what it's like to be you, to be Asian growing up. And like, we never necessarily even share it because it doesn't come up in conversation, but this provides the perfect opportunity to kind of share a window, whether it's similar or dissimilar, right? So if some of you have had a very different experience, you can also say like, so my family is not like that at all. This is what my family went through, or this is how I grew up. That's different than what they, you know, grew up. And so I think it's very important for us to all kind of learn about one another's cultures. When we those, you know, friends of ours who are Italian American, like I've seen a ton of Italian centric movies, and I feel like I know what it's like to be Italian more than I know what it's like to be, you know, Asian American, because there's such few, you know, references for that. And so I think we are able to share our culture with more people, then people are going to view us differently and more American, hopefully.
I like that, Larissa. I actually went with my friends and they weren't Asian and they loved it. But the thing that I liked too was that it wasn't like we had this deep conversation about it. It was just like, oh, that was a really awesome movie. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, I can't believe that they're like, it was just, that was really cool. And we didn't really overanalyze it. It was just that they enjoyed it as a movie. And that's what I really hope will be the case going forward. In terms of preparing other Asians to see it, I would say bring tissues because it definitely made me cry. And I would just say probably like have fun, because it's just a really great movie. And I think that's what they wanted it to be. They just wanted it to stand alone as good as any other rom-com that you've ever seen, and probably even better in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can stand on its own. It doesn't need to have any prefacing or support. But I guess it might be interesting for maybe younger Asians to see two films. One, Breakfast at Tiffany, so they can see that Japanese photographer, bucktooth character played by Mickey Rooney, who, you know, back in the 50s was really pretty racist. And then see maybe the Bruce Lee movie where he actually watched that clip with his white girlfriend in the film and walked out of the film, and then come see Crazy Rich Asians to see, you know, the difference of that span. And it's been quite a while since Breakfast at Tiffany's. I think it was 58. So, you know, just to get a sense of the way that Asians were portrayed in film, from using non-Asians to portray them, to finally using the real thing.
I actually went and watched a movie with a big Hollywood actor. I can't mention him, he will get mad at me. Because so I forced him to go watch the movie with me, and he was like, okay, yeah, I'm only gonna watch this movie. If it sucks, we're gonna leave. I was like, deal. Okay, cool. So we went in. He was like enjoying the whole time. I was like, he was like saying, he was saying it's bigger than I thought. So that to me is like, okay, so he was impressed. He was impressed with the movie. So what I would recommend is to bring a lot of popcorn, water, tissue, and don't pee in your pants. Diapers.
Oh, you're not even going to give us a hint as to who that famous actor is without saying his name?
He's been in big movies. He's co-star with Vince Vaughn. I do it on the message. I can't. He'll kill me.
Off the record, right? Off the record.
Okay.
What happens on this podcast stays on the podcast.
Right. He goes everywhere.
Yeah, I'm grateful that a lot of people have gone to see the movie based on, I think, everybody's glowing recommendations. I mean, on Facebook or everywhere we went, we've been telling people about it, and a lot of our non-Asian friends have gone to see it, as I'm sure you've had the same effect, as a result of my husband and I posting so much about it. And
yes,
the fact, thank God it was good, because that was really the threshold. Like, if it wasn't a good movie, we would have nothing to stand on, and it wouldn't have done as well. But because it was a good movie, like, quality trumps everything, right? Like, it's fantastic. It doesn't matter what it is. If it sucked, they would blame it on it being Asian and inferior quality, right? But because it was very good, and kudos to John Chu for doing a remarkable job. He was the right director at the right time to make this film, and it was magical.
Yeah, that's what I was praying for, that it wouldn't suck, because then it'll be another 25 years until they make another movie with an all-Asian cast. Yeah.
It was interesting because I got to actually go to this event where Kevin Kwan and John Chu were being interviewed at USC, and they were saying how they had actually gotten a really big offer from Netflix. So Netflix had thrown like a ton of money at this movie, and it was like really tempting, because I can't remember which studio actually produced this, but they definitely didn't give them as much as Netflix would have. But they realized just how important this movie was and how significant. And so they felt like they had to actually show it through the traditional theaters versus streaming or something like that. And thankfully they did that. And thankfully, yeah, like you said, it turned out great. And thankfully we won't have Scarlett Johansson playing Asian characters, or like Emma Stone playing like a Hawaiian character, or hopefully we won't be having that anymore.
Yeah.
Yes, this opens a lot of doors for us tremendously. So, John Chu, I salute you.
Yes, thank you, John Chu.
Call us, right? Call us. We are available for all roles that you need.
Yes, we want to be
Kevin Kwan.
We want to be the extras in the sequel.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Patrice, Wendy, Larissa, and Abby for being on the Asian Women's panel and participating in this discussion. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy it too. Now, for you, our viewers, listeners, what is your takeaway from today's episode? Let us know your thoughts. If you enjoy watching and listening to this podcast, please subscribe, review, and share the link to this podcast at www.asianwomenofpower.com. Share it on your social media and tell a friend. We appreciate your support. I'm your host, Kim Chi Chow. Until next time, live life loud. Bye now.